The internet is often an angry place, especially when video games are involved. People converge on internet forums to discuss or rant about new announcements or changes to their favourite franchises. Sometimes these events can cause huge amounts of tension between fans of various games or systems, or between the gamers and the developers themselves. In this video, I've decided what I believe to be the 10 biggest video game-related meltdowns to appear on internet communities over the past few years. As always, these are only my opinions, and I invite you to take to the comments section and discuss whether you feel there's an event that's in the wrong place, or one that I've missed entirely. Any announcement to the Smash Bros franchise is obviously going to be a big deal, since it's a series loved by many. However, the announcement of Sonic, featuring in the upcoming Smash Bros Brawl, excited large numbers of fans, some of whom had been gaming during the Sega vs Nintendo generations, where Sonic and Mario fighting in the same game wouldn't even have been dreamed of. Clearly enough people supported this decision because, well, he's now been confirmed for the next Smash Bros game, whatever that turns out to be called. That event doesn't make the list, however, because I didn't notice any real internet disturbances over it when compared to the Brawl announcement. Going into 2010, the PS3 was the only fully locked console of the 7th generation, and many considered it to be unhackable. That was until George Hotz, better known as GeoHot, came along. Now, I'm no hacking expert, so I don't know the technical details, but GeoHot basically managed to find a way into the deepest depths of the PS3's processor, therefore allowing for homebrew software and PS2 emulation to be used on the system. He turned this exploit into a feature that could be shared to the public and run via the PS3's Other OS function, which was basically a function that allowed users to download their own operating system onto their PS3. Now, this was causing enough of a storm as it was, but things escalated when Sony responded by releasing a firmware update that removed the Other OS feature from all PS3s. GeoHot then posted a video showing a PS3 running the Other OS feature on the new update. However, he never released this one publicly. He even appeared on G4's The Loop show, where he explained why he chose to jailbreak the PS3. He had multiple lawsuits filed against him. It was a pretty big deal at the time. It could also be argued to be linked with the later PSN outage, which you can expect to be featuring higher up on my list. It's funny when anyone on the internet flips out, but no one does it better than the video gamer. This was a line from an article posted on Kotaku following the announcement of Bayonetta 2 for the Wii U. For those of you who don't know what happened, here's the basics. Bayonetta was a highly praised title on the 360 and PS3 and gained somewhat of a cult following, but not enough sales for developer Platinum Games to consider making a sequel. However, Nintendo, the one console manufacturer who didn't see the original release on their console, decided to partner with Platinum Games to fund a sequel. Naturally, this meant that the game was a Wii U exclusive, and it wasn't the system that's traditionally associated with the audience who bought the first Bayonetta. This caused a sudden wave of backlash against both Nintendo and Platinum Games. Some argued to buy the Wii U and Bayonetta 2 as used copies, so the companies didn't receive any of the money gained, and many others took to Twitter to directly express their anger towards those involved. One particularly humorous example involved kicking a dolphin in their privates, but I don't know. All of this is a shameful response, to be honest, considering the game wouldn't have existed without Nintendo's assistance. But, you know, this list is here to show the extent to which games can freak out on the internet, so let's continue. The PS2 was a massive success, remaining the highest-selling video games console to date. You got so close to yes, I'm sorry. Anyway, this was in no small part to the ability of the PS2 being able to be cheaply produced to allow for a mass market to purchase them in huge numbers. It could be suggested then that the moment the presentation slides came up that announced the sequel to the PS2, the PS3, was to cost $599 for the basic model. Sony's chance of another generation domination was immediately lost. The internet went wild with this. I'm sure you've seen the remixes of the $599 announcement on YouTube. In fact, I could probably extend this point to the Sony E3 2006 conference as a whole, with other brilliant moments such as Giant Enemy Crab and Ridge Racer. But it's the future implication that the $599 announcement had for the PS3 that gives it its spot on this list. It had a very difficult couple of years after it was launched, partly because of the pricing. It looked for a time that Sony was in deep trouble in the console market. After getting pounded by the PlayStation 2 in the 6th generation, with a console that could only be described as a purple lunchbox, people were very interested to see what Nintendo had planned for the 7th generation. And I think it's fair to say that very few expected a console like this. The controller, the relative weakness in power to its competitors, the name, it was just unexpected in every way. This obviously led to a lot of chaos on online communities. Even some who had previously supported Nintendo announced they were dropping support, although it's obviously impossible to determine how many of those claims were actually accurate. Even the BBC in England reported the next day that a long list of puerile jokes based on the name had appeared on the internet. Now you can't deny that is a pretty huge meltdown. It's funny to think that a launch that caused so much surprise and outrage amongst gamers is now pretty much accepted by everybody. The Wii just doesn't seem like such a funny name now, does it? I'm sure many of you are expecting arguably the worst game launch of all time to feature on this list, and here it is. Ironically, it was the huge anticipation for the game and resulting popularity that made this launch such a disaster. You see, the game's requirement for a continuous internet connection to actually play the game meant that since such a large number of players were trying to connect at once, EA's servers crashed. Obviously this meant that people couldn't play the game that they'd actually paid for. Amazon.com went to the extent of withdrawing the digital version of SimCity from its site as a result of huge numbers of customer complaints. Tensions grew even higher when reports began to emerge of a user being threatened with a ban for demanding a refund. I think this launch really opens the eyes of a lot of people to the dangers of an always online game, and will probably be presented as arguments in the future for any game that dares to try the same. I hinted that this event would be coming up earlier in the episode, as it followed a stressful time for Sony due to the GeoHot hacking scandal. This event makes it much higher on the list, however, because of the scale of the number of people affected and the severity of the issue. At one point, the PlayStation Network outage looks like it could cost Sony a severe blow in lawsuits on people having their private information stolen. From April 17th to April 20th, it was revealed that personal information from every single one of the 77 million accounts on the PlayStation Network appeared to have been stolen, making it one of the largest data breaches in history. Sony's week-long delay in actually revealing this hack put Sony in trouble with various world governments, including the US. Now, you can imagine the field day that fans of rival consoles had when Sony's online system was down for almost a month, and was in serious trouble with the US government. All in all, this meltdown was huge, but it also rose wider questions about the safety of online security as a whole. Imagine the scale of an issue if Valve was to have their Steam users' personal data taken. Hopefully we'll never have to witness such an event. You know that a meltdown has gotten serious when angered fans actually force a huge developer to create a new ending for their blockbuster hit. That's exactly what happened with Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect was a series that was supposed to be influenced by decisions your character made throughout the games, and some people had transferred files across from the first to the second and finally the third game, all to ensure the decisions they'd made would remain with them throughout. The discovery then that the ending of Mass Effect 3 contained plot holes, a general lack of closure, and above all, was almost exactly the same no matter what the character choices, caused outrage on a huge scale on the internet. A group of fans managed to raise $1,000 in under an hour to go towards the purchase of 402 cupcakes, which they poetically coloured red, green and blue to correspond with different endings, but had the same vanilla flavour on the inside. Another user actually took his complaints to the Federal Trade Commission, claiming that BioWare failed to deliver on their promises, and this was actually supported by the US Better Business Bureau. Eventually the backlash on the ending created an extended cut free DLC to be released, even after earlier claims had suggested they would keep the game as it was. I believe this event can show the power that gamers and online communities can hold when taking action in large numbers. It's funny to think that this meltdown probably wouldn't have been such a big deal after all if the fans actually knew how this game would turn out, but at the time this was about as big as it got. Remember the context. The PS3 was already confirmed at a high price point and there was a risk of losing their position at the top of the console food chain, and suddenly, arguably their biggest exclusive was announced to become Multiplat on the PS3 and 360. Microsoft as an American company were not expected to have Japanese RPGs released on their system, let alone what was expected to be the biggest one of the generation. This meltdown was so large that internet forums crashed. Threads on some of the larger sites like NeoGAF reached 1,000 pages in a matter of hours. Everybody had an opinion, and some of those were stronger than others. For example, claimed that no Japanese people would buy either game because Square Enix had lost their honour or something. It's on YouTube somewhere, you should look it up. Anyway, even to this day, there are claims that Final Fantasy XIII would have been a better game if it had remained exclusive to the PS3, with reports of CGI cutscenes being taken out of the game to help it fit onto fewer 360 discs. I think this event showed the end of an era where one console could dominate over the others, all future console generations to be much more closely fought due to the increase in large multi-platform releases such as this one. Nonetheless, this is an internet community meltdown that will never be forgotten. This is the big one. A controversy that internet communities are arguably still feeling the remnants of today. A meltdown that caused one of the largest corporations on the planet to drastically alter their plans for their big new release due to a tidal wave of anger from gamers all over the internet. When the Xbox One was first being announced, there were a number of features that it had that made a lot of people very angry. Plans to block used games from being played on the system. Plans for the console to require an always-on internet connection. Keep in mind that this was still during the aftermath of the SimCity 2013 issue, and plans for the console to be unusable without the Kinect 2 being attached, which still exists on the current Xbox One to some extent. With every new report or rumour that came out, the controversy surrounding the Xbox One grew stronger, which wasn't helped by the fact that Microsoft employees weren't exactly helping the situation. One caused an uproar on Twitter by comparing the Xbox One needing an internet connection to a vacuum cleaner needing electricity. And Don Matrick, Microsoft's chief of interactive entertainment, said in an interview that if customers wanted to buy the upcoming console but had a limited internet access, then there was another product for them, the Xbox 360. Article after interview after rumour, the Xbox DRM meltdown spread across the entirety of the internet, with large video game personalities such as Jim Sterling on the Jimquisition, and even Machinima, a fairly pro-Microsoft group, calling complete boycott on the Xbox One due to its policies. This continued until finally, despite repeated insistences that the policies were there to stay, I suppose low pre-order numbers spooked Microsoft enough they did an almost complete 180 on all their policies. And I think that ends this list on a high note. Sometimes internet meltdowns can be simply pointless or misguided aggression, making the community as a whole look bad. However, when fans from different consoles can come together to protest against measures that could be a step towards making the hobby as a whole full of DRM and other nonsense, and these protests can actually influence the decisions of a company as large as Microsoft, I think that's something pretty admirable. Thanks for watching everybody, and be sure to comment with your own opinions on the issues covered in this video should you wish, and please subscribe if you want to see more content in the future. Hey, if you felt particularly inspired by this list, then you could even share it with others. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.